My name is Pablo. Today I will present you a research related with enhancing financial market surveillance processes through a comprehensive review of their data requirements and machine learning algorithms. The research is led by Professor Ramzi Ben Abdallah, Professor Eli Elia, and myself. First of all, the research is supported by the Financial Market Surveillance Intelligence Center of the École des Sciences de la Gestion de la Université du Québec à Montréal. About the content of the presentation, the first part is the research context and questions, some related work, the methodological approach, results and contribution, and future work. About the context, for the last couple of years, financial regulators and most of the important regulators in the world started to exploring machine learning. For instance, in England, the Financial Conduct Authority started in 2016 to organize proof of concept initiatives. In 2022, the Bank of England and the FCA presented a report about AI in financial industry. In the case of Singapore, Singapore started organizing proof of concept initiatives in AI in 2018. In 2028, along with the Bank for International Settlements, they launched another proof of concept to explore regulatory data and an analytics platform. In the case of Quebec, in Canada, the provincial financial authority, the Autorité des marchés financiers, tested in 2017 a machine learning algorithm for the OTC market. In 2018, the regulatory division of the Montreal Exchange signed a joint initiative with IBADO, an AI lab and research center in Montreal. And a couple of weeks ago, in 2024, the MF signed a partnership with MILA, the Quebec Artificial Intelligence Institute. So as a summary, financial regulators have been actively exploring machine learning and making a partnership in order to go further. We have the opportunity to collaborate with them to know their expectation and thoughts. And the main challenge for them right now is to identify or define the right data according to the case of a study and the machine learning approach. Why that is important? Because as it was mentioned earlier, it's not the same thing anti-money laundering that credit card fraud or financial manipulation practices. Each kind of misbehavior requires a specific data set and a specific machine learning approach. So the research question is really related to that. Data set requirements, case study, machine learning approach. About the related work, there is plenty of articles, really good articles that present some results and methodologies. We choose these two because are the most recent, and they provide a consolidation of articles in order to understand manipulation practices and machine learning. However, in the perspective of our approach, this kind of work is always a high-level result. That means they present financial market manipulation practices, but not which one, or some data sets, but they don't provide more information about that. It's just the main results. The approach of our research is try to support financial regulators and institutions in the seeking of academic research related to their objectives. So it's a little bit more in the lens or perspective of financial institutions. To do that, we are using a generic financial market surveillance process that I will explain right away in order to identify some key elements available in academic research. A generic financial market surveillance process is a five-step process that financial regulators use to control or monitoring financial markets, such as stocks, bonds, and other kind of financial assets. In the first two steps, the data and the approach is to identify financial manipulation practices and activate a red flag or an alert. So there are data, rule-based systems, machine learning models, and data pre-processing. However, in the step 3, once that the red flag was activated, the financial regulator needs to analyze the scenario of that manipulation attempt. That means that the perspective changed, and as a consequence of that, the data set could be changed because they need complementary data to recreate the scenario and to confirm if there is a manipulation practice or not. That means that they need a different data pre-processing and, of course, a different machine learning approach. So this distinction in the process is really important for our research because we will try to scan academic articles considering these two different requirements from financial institutions, the step 2 and the step 3. About the methodological approach, we are using the general steps and guidelines proposed by Templier et Paré for developing a narrative literature review. This process has 6 steps. The first one is related with the research questions, identify keywords, and generate a query. The query is for searching in the academic literature, academic database, or journals, papers related with the questions. Step 3 is defining a procedure for screening for inclusion in the papers. Step 4 is for assessing quality of the papers that we are retaining. Step 5 is extracting the data of each paper, and for that we are using this generic financial manipulation process. And step 6 is analyze and summarize the data. So about the process, about the methodological approach, the first 4 steps that we implemented gave us more than 500 documents or academic papers. From them, after the step 4, 71 documents were retained for analysis. In this case, we use a Scopus database, ProQuest database, and different kind of journals related with design science, finance, information technology, all related to the subject of the research. About the step 5, extracting the data. As I mentioned, we have 71 articles or papers, and in order to give some sense to financial regulator about the output, we are going to use this generic process. That means try to identify which one belongs to step 2, generating an alert, and which one is more related about a scenario analysis. And of course, data set requirements and machine learning indicated in the research. So we took this generic process and create some comprehensive categories, which are the same thing, but in a different structure. Identify the steps, what kind of financial market manipulation was explored in the academic research, the data source, data set requirements, data pre-processing practices, what kind of machine learning, and during the review, we added more categories, such as hyperparameter definitions, benchmarks, and performance metrics. Why? Because during the research itself, we realized that these 3 categories are really relevant to replicate the results, to show why this approach it could be better than other one, but also to provide some common practices in this subject. The second step, I will make a deeper explanation, is really important. Why? Because financial regulators are trying to identify manipulation practices. But of course, how you calculate or identify is really confidential, because if you show that information, all stakeholders will try to avoid that kind of practice. And in the academic research, sometimes it's harder to find a specific financial market manipulation definition. So to make the difference during the review, we are using a financial market manipulation taxonomy available in an article of Severin in 2017, where they explain in detail different types of financial market manipulation practices. Some articles use these kind of categories. Some others use general market anomalies or outlier, because in that particular moment, maybe the researchers didn't have access to this kind of definition, or they decided to use a different approach. So in the review, we are making this difference. This difference is important because this one is part of the common vocabulary of financial regulators. So if they get access to this kind of academic papers, it could be better it could be a better understanding for them. So we got the 71 papers. We scanned it using these comprehensive categories, these ones, and we generate a big table with more than 100 dimensions on the papers as a rows in order to classify or better identify some dimensions in each article. For instance, in this table, all those papers are related to alert of manipulation, the step 2, and all those are related to analysis of a scenario. So I will try to show you more dimensions using the same example. So using the same example, we have the steps, we have the financial market manipulation. In some articles, they specify which one. In others, the research define themselves an anomaly, and they provide that explanation that it could be useful for regulators and financial institutions. Some others, they are focused in an anomaly defined normal and abnormal behavior. So try to identify the anomaly, but not necessarily they know which one, or if it's a really manipulation practice. In the case of data sources, most of them, of course, use financial market data, but also in the final version of the paper, we will add which one. For instance, there is a research webpage named Lobster Data that researchers can access to NASDAQ and Standard & Poor's stocks datasets in order to explore and make research. And we realized that at least 4 or 5 of the papers use the same data source, but the approach, the analysis, the machine learning is quite different. So that information is available in the final results. Same thing about internet data or complementary data. For analysis of a scenario, some research needs to recreate using information from blogs, internet, Twitter, Reddit, what happened in that moment when there was an anomaly in order to confirm if there was, for instance, a pump and dump manipulation. From the dataset requirements, we identify how data label was done. In some cases, it was US regulator that provides some documentation, Indian regulators, Chinese regulators, so all that is detailed in the final version. How was the data granularity and mapping when you need to consolidate different data sources to analyze manipulation practice? Data preprocess, that means if they use supervised or unsupervised machine learning models to prepare the data sets, what kind of balanced data set technique they use, how they identify or optimize features, and so on. It's not necessarily about the data, it's about the data preprocess. And in that case, synthetic data is a very important dimension because it allows to researchers to create a database for the machine learning. For example, in this paper, the author generate collusive transactions in the dataset, but it was part of the research. In these two cases, they use a definition of the Westinghouse stock pump and dump manipulation practice that is available in the research. So they went to that paper and recreate the manipulation practice, the pump and dump, and they then injected the data in the final data sets. So all that kind of useful information for both researchers and financial regulator is available in the final version of the paper. Of course, what kind of machine learning model was applied in each paper? It could be supervised, unsupervised, or ensemble. And this information is, of course, really useful if you need inspiration for your own research, and also for data science teams in financial institutions, because now they know, okay, this one or this other one is related with this data preprocess, with this data requirements, with this scenario or manipulation alert step. And finally, we identify in which paper there is a defined hyperparameter setting in order to replicate the model, which one was the benchmark, because it's really important to understand how the research is making the comparison, and the performance metrics that it was mentioned before also. It's not the same thing, the metrics for balanced and unbalanced data, and in manipulation practice detection, is a really unbalanced data set that we are trying to develop. As a main contribution of the research, the research or the approach tries to make a link between financial regulators and institution requirements through this generic process and academic research. It's also a good starting point for researchers interested in the financial market, that they need some starting points. Also identifies practices for labeling data and analysis of a scenario. So you can follow the whole link and you will see in detail what was the practice. Also how that data set were prepared and which techniques were used. And finally, the machine learning algorithms in each case. About the future work, even if this first part is a deliverable itself, because it's a literature review, also is a relevant component for an artifact based on design science. These kind of artifacts are really useful to develop machine learning initiatives. And in our case, it's really related with the financial market industry, regulators and banks and other financial institutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So let's